If you love me, please don't judge me. Got my hands tied, the power's above me. Don't shoot the messenger, I'm just a puppet here. If you wanna place blame, then look to the puppeteer. Family, fortune, envy, jealousy, privilege, passed on, legacy, secret, sabotage, borderline, felony, suicide, subtract, selfish, pedigree, yeah.
How's it going, everybody? It's C-RadTV back here with another video. So, of course, time to continue that What If NASCAR Had F1 Point System series. So, the last time in this series, we took a look at what if the Cup Series had the F1 points in the 2000s, and we learned that quite a few things would change. Jimmie Johnson would still dominate the shit out of the sport, but it would go a lot differently than it did in real life. And we will have had quite a few interesting different champions for sure. And in this part, we're going to continue on and look at the 2010s and see what if NASCAR had the F1 points format in the 2010s. So, of course, for this part, I'll go ahead and I'll show the points on screen where to 2010. The point system will get a massive overhaul. And this would lead to the points format we have today, where it's now the top 10 finishers are eligible for points. And yeah, and the max points you can gain or lose in a race is 25 points. So of course this format, it was designed to put a bigger emphasis on winning, finishing well, and being consistent when it mattered the most. Mainly the three things you really needed in the old season-long points format to win a championship was winning, being consistently finishing well, consistency, and long luck and skill. Now I know for 2014 there was the double points format for the season finale. I'm not doing that format. Mainly because F1 only did it for 1 year and then went back to the normal format. When F1 did the double points format, the F1 fans hated it because they thought it was stupid and dumb and it was a gimmick. And that it was just F1 trying to manufacture drama instead of letting it come naturally. And a lot of them felt like the title shouldn't be decided in one race and that it should be decided in a season-long battle for the championship. I don't know how NASCAR and I know IndyCar's done double points for like almost every year except for 2020 with the pandemic last year. I know IndyCar, I think IndyCar fans don't really mind it too much. I know a lot of NASCAR fans are open to double points, but F1 fans hated it. Then again, F1 fans are built a lot differently than NASCAR fans. I'm not sure how IndyCar and NASCAR fans would handle double points, but I do agree with the IndyCar fans to an extent. I do think double points is kind of a bit of a gimmick. So yeah, we're not going to do that here. And for the 2019 format, where whoever had the fastest lap will get a bonus point as long as they finish in the top 10. I can't find any site that has it that can give me a list of who had the fastest lap at every race from 2019 on. So I'm not going to do that bonus point. So it's just going to be the top 10 finishers get points as you see on the screen. But yeah, and before we jump into this video, let me once again stress out that this is just a hypothetical scenario. I know everyone would have raced differently had this format been in play. This is just for fun. So now, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and let's jump right into it. So in 2010, this was mainly a three-man battle for the championship between Jimmie Johnson, Denny Hamlin, and Kevin Harvick. All three were neck and neck with each other all year. Jimmie Johnson and Denny Hamlin were faster than Harvick, but Harvick was able to stay in it because he was very consistent in the 2010. The one big turning point for Hamlin in this championship battle was at Phoenix when he was dominating the race at Phoenix. The second last race before the season finale, until the pit call came when Hamlin was told out of nowhere he was 12 laps short and had to pit, and that cost him the race. And that cost Hamlin a shot at finishing in the points, while Harvick and Jimmie finished 5th and 6th respectively to gain points on Hamlin. But yeah, even with that, it still come down to the final race of the season between all three drivers for the championship, where Jimmy and Harvick were separated by only 4 points, and Hamlin was entered 17 points out. So Hamlin would effectively need to win the race, and he would need Jimmy and Harvick to struggle and finish outside the points. While for Jimmy and Harvick, whoever finished above, if Harvick won, then he'd win the championship. If Jimmy finished ahead of Harvick, he'd win the championship. So in the season finale at Homestead, Miami, Hamlin would start at the back of the field. Jimmy and Harvick started near the front. And then early in the race, Hamlin would have a spin like 30 laps into the race. And Hamlin would never really recover from it. Hamlin would finish around mid-pack and finish 14th. So that would eliminate Denny Hamlin from the championship. So it came down to Jimmy Johnson and Kevin Harvick. Both drivers had made mistakes on pit road, so it was evened out. But in the end, Jimmy Johnson would end up finishing second in the season finale, while Harvick would end up finishing third. And that second place finish, that was more than enough for Jimmy Johnson to lock up his 5th championship and beat Harvick for the title by only 7 points. So under this format, Jimmy Johnson would still win 5 championships. This would make him the 3rd driver to win at least 5 or more titles, tying him with Jeff Gordon. So the only driver now ahead of Jimmy Johnson in terms of championships is now Richard Petty, 7. And now the question is, in this series, can Jimmy Johnson still get the 7 titles in this series like he did in real life? So 2011, it was one of those rare seasons where there wasn't a clear most dominant driver throughout the season. It was really a number of different drivers that could have made a case for this championship. Mainly because, this was a year we had 18 different winners and 5 first-time winners. There were a lot of different winners for sure. It was a very good, great season for NASCAR for sure. In the end, this championship battle was mainly between 4 drivers. It was between Carl Edwards, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, and Kyle Busch. Now, Tony Stewart and Matt Kenseth were also part of this battle too, but sadly, not everyone can compete for the championship. Mainly, Tony tried to get into it by winning 5 of the last 10. But that comeback would be too little too late, and spoiler alert, that comeback would only be good enough for Tony to finish 5th in the championship under this format. So it's mainly between Carl, Kyle, Jimmy, and Jeff. But sadly in this season, Jimmy and Johnson and Jeff Gordon both failed to be consistent when it mattered the most, and they're eliminated with a couple races to go in the year. While Kyle Busch, the big turning point for Kyle Busch in this championship battle was at Texas, where in the truck race, Kyle Busch tried to kill Ron Hornaday in an incident on lap 14 under caution by wrecking him at full speed. We all know what happened. Kyle Busch was parked. Kyle Busch ended up becoming one of the most hated drivers in the sport. That ended up being his point of no return in terms of being liked by the fan base. That incident alone is one of the main reasons why I hate Kyle Busch to this day. So, in the end, we all know what happened after that. Kyle Busch would end up being suspended from the Xfinity in the Cup race at Texas that weekend. Carl Edwards would take full advantage and finish 2nd in that race to gain 18 points on Kyle Busch. So, Carl would take full advantage to build a big enough gap. And in the end, because of Kyle Busch being a fucking idiot, Carl Edwards would end up locking up the championship with a race to go in the season, despite winning only 1 race. But Carl was flat out consistent. I believe he had more top 5s and more top 10s than any other driver in the sport. So despite the 1 win, Carl still had speed. He just couldn't finish the deal in a lot of races. So yeah, that was so Carl would win the championship in 2011. This would be his 2nd championship under this format. And yeah, under this format, it would still be possible to win 1 race and still win the championship. because Carl had consistency and he had finishing well and he had luck on his side. So he had 3 or 4 of the 5 things he needed to win the championship under this format. So those comments Kyle Busch made in the truck race at Texas where he's like, oh, well, if Hornaday was smarter, then he should have known to race me better than he did on lap 14. Well, Kyle, since you were running for the Cup Championship under this format, maybe you should have raced smarter than that with Hornaday on lap 14, you dumbass. Where is your professionalism? Seriously. But then again, Kyle, you have no business going down and competing in Xfinity and trucks, so... So for the 2012 championship, this was mainly a 3-man battle for the championship between Jimmy Johnson, Brad Keselowski, and Denny Hamlin. All three were neck and neck with each other all year. Hell, all three ended up tying for most wins by a driver in the season with 5 wins apiece. So not one of them was really the most dominant throughout the season. Like, all three were neck and neck with each other all year. In the end, Keselowski and Hamlin would both fail to be consistent in key points of the season when it mattered the most. Jimmy Johnson would take full advantage of it. And Jimmy Johnson, he would end up locking up his 6th championship with 2 races to go in the season. So Jimmy Johnson's real-life collapse in 2012 would have came too little too late for Keselowski and Hamlin, as Jimmy would have the title locked up before Phoenix. He would lock it up at Texas with 2 races to go in the year. So under this format, this would be Jimmy Johnson's 6th championship, which would give him the 2nd most titles under this format. Meaning now there's only one man standing between Jimmy Johnson and the top, and that's Richard Petty. So, of course, for 2013, we had the introduction to the Gen 6 car. And, of course, for this championship battle, it was mainly a 3-man battle for the title between Jimmy Johnson, Matt Kenseth, and Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch was able to try and stay in on consistency, while Jimmy and Matt just were flat out faster than Kyle. But at the end of the year, Matt Kenseth and Kyle Busch would both fail to be consistent when it mattered the most, while Jimmy Johnson would take full advantage of it and pull away from Kenseth and Kyle Busch at the end of the year. And Jimmy Johnson would end up locking up the championship with a race to go in the season at Phoenix. So at Phoenix, Jimmy Johnson would officially win his 7th Cup Series championship, which would tie him with Richard Petty for most championships in the sport. So under this format, Jimmy Johnson would still win 7 championships, but he would go about it a lot differently than he did in real life. And also, this would be Jimmy's 7th title in 10 seasons, which makes this run even more impressive. So yeah, but the difference is under this format, Jimmy would be only one of 2 drivers to win 7 titles, since under this format, Dale Earnhardt would only have 3 championships. So yeah, Jimmy would still win the title in 2013, and this would be his 7th championship in the Cup Series. So before we get into the 2014 season, I'm going to give a shout out to Black Flags Matter. He did a video on this season in 2014, went in depth on it. Because out of the videos Black Flags Matter's done on the NASCAR had the F1 point system, this was one of those 3, and this was the first one he did. He did a really good job in the video. You know, like I said the last couple parts, especially the one in the 90s, he was my main inspiration in doing this series. So shout out to him. Link to his video will be down in the description box down below. So I'll go ahead and I'll give a quick rundown of what the championship battle would have been. So 2014, the championship battle was mainly between 4 drivers. It was between Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, and Jeff Gordon. Harvick and Logano, both of them would fail to be consistent in key points of the season when it mattered the most. They would be eliminated with a race to go in the season. So in the season finale, it ended up coming down to the final race between Jeff Gordon and Brad Keselowski, where Keselowski would enter 3 points ahead of Jeff Gordon. So effectively, whoever finished ahead of the other would end up winning the championship. Jeff Gordon, he dominated most of the Homestead race until a late race caution forced Jeff Gordon to make a pit strategy while Keselowski would stay out for track position. Gordon would wind up finishing 10th, while Keselowski would end up finishing 3rd. And that 3rd place finish, that would be more than enough for Keselowski to lock up his first championship. So Keselowski would still win a championship, but this title would come 2 years later than it did in real life. And this was a season where Keselowski really got a lot of hate and heat, mainly because he drove very aggressively, and it rubbed a lot of people in the wrong way. But the only thing we'll remember from the Keselowski-Jeff Gordon title fight in 2014 was Keselowski cutting Jeff Gordon's left rear tire down at Texas, and then Jeff Gordon going over to Keselowski after the race and kicking the shit out of him. So 2015, this was mainly a 2-man battle for the championship between Kevin Harvick and Joey Logano. Logano had a lot more speed than Harvick in the year, but Harvick, he was a lot more consistent than Logano when it mattered the most. But throughout the season, the main turning point in this championship battle would be Martinsville in the fall, or the fall in general, when Logano would get in a pissing match with Matt Kenseth. And then at Martinsville, Logano would then proclaim to, quote, free Matt, as Matt Kenseth would retaliate after Logano cost Kenseth the win at Kansas by dumping him for the win. Kenseth would get back at Logano and would wreck him at Martinsville while Logano was leading, and that would effectively end Logano's championship, as Harvick would take advantage of that race and Logano's issues at Texas. And that race, and of course we all know what happened, Kenseth would end up getting suspended for 2 races. Don't get it wrong, Logano fucking deserved it. Logano deserved to get taken out by Kenseth in that race. But anyway, going back on topic, Harvick, he would go on, and Harvick would end up locking up the championship at Phoenix with a race to go in the season. But the only thing that Harvick would have been remembered for in 2015 was when he intentionally wrecked the field at Talladega. So 2016, it was another one of those weird seasons where there wasn't a clear-cut dominant driver all season. It was really a toss-up between a number of drivers. But in the end, this championship was mainly down between 4 drivers. It was between Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, and Brad Keselowski. All 4 had their great moments throughout the season, but in the end, Logano and Keselowski would both fail to be consistent when it mattered the most, and they'd be eliminated with around a race or 2 to go in the season. So this championship battle would go down to the final race of the season between Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick, where Kyle Busch would enter the race with an 8-point lead. So Harvick would effectively need to win the race and would need Kyle Busch to finish 3rd or worse, or vice versa. Like, he would need Kyle Busch to finish a couple spots behind. Kyle Busch, he would need to either finish 3rd or better, or he could lock it up if Harvick finished, I think it's 7th or worse. So yeah, it was a very close championship battle between Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick. In the end, though, Kevin Harvick would finish 3rd in the season finale at Homestead, Miami. but Kyle Busch would finish 6th in the season finale. And that points difference, that would have been enough for Kyle. That 6th place finish for Kyle. That would be enough for Kyle Busch to win the championship by 1 single point over Kevin Harvick. So in 2016, Kyle Busch would claim his first Cup championship. And now this video just got an assload of dislikes. And to everyone watching this video, brace yourself in the comments for all the Kyle Busch sexuals that are about to raid the comments saying Kyle Busch got robbed of a championship. Pretty ironic that they'll be crying about Kyle Busch being robbed of a championship, if you ask me. So 2017, this was really when this really becomes really hypothetical, because this was when stage racing came into play. I'm not going to do stage racing or any of that stuff for this series, because stage racing is kind of a gimmick, especially with the stage cautions at the end of the race, so I'm not doing it. It's a bit of a gimmick, and I'm not doing any gimmicks in this. So for 2017, back on topic, this season was mainly about all Martin Truex Jr. Like, since the start of the year, Truex was just very dominant throughout every race. Like, he was the fastest car all year in terms of speed and consistency by a wide margin. The only driver that was close to him for most of this season was Kyle Larson for Chip Ganassi. But Larson would end up having a massive late season collapse. Mainly, Larson would end up having 4 DNFs in the last 5 races. And Truex would take full advantage of those struggles, as Truex would be able to pull away from Kyle Larson late in the season. And Martin Truex Jr. would lock up his first championship at Texas with 2 races to go in the season. So Truex would still win his first championship in 2017. Like, he was just that dominant all season. So for 2018, this was mainly a 2-man battle for the championship between Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick. Both drivers were dead even with each other all year. Both drivers were the fastest all season and consistent all season, both having 8 wins apiece. Like, both of them were dead even, too. So in the end, this would come down to the season finale at Homestead Miami Speedway between the two, where Kevin Harvick would enter, leading Kyle Busch would enter the race being ahead of Harvick by 17 points. So Kevin Harvick would effectively need to win the race, and he would need Kyle Busch to finish. He would need Kyle Busch to finish 7th or worse for Harvick to win the championship. But in the season finale at Homestead, Harvick and Kyle Busch ran near the front most of this race. In the end, Harvick would end up finishing 3rd in the season finale at Homestead, but Kyle Busch would end up finishing 4th in the season finale. And since Harvick finished 3rd or worse, and Kyle Busch finished 4th, that would be more than enough for Kyle Busch to win his 2nd championship, and Kyle Busch would edge out Kevin Harvick by 14 points in 2018. So Kyle Busch would win his 2nd title in 3 years under this format in 2018 over Kevin Harvick. So before we jump into the 2019 season, I'm going to give another quick shout out to NFJJ, who did a video mainly explaining the F1 point system and how it could work in NASCAR. And in his video, he used the 2019 season points as an example. So shout out to him. He actually was the one that inspired Black Flags Matter to do his 3 videos on if NASCAR had the F1 points. And then Black Flags Matter inspired me to do this series. So shout out to NFJJ. I'll leave a link to that video in the description box down below. So for anyone who wants to go check that out, since NFJJ goes really in depth and in detail on how it would work out. So yeah, anyway, I'll go ahead and I'll do a quick rundown of the 2019 season points. So 2019, it was mainly about all Joe Gibbs racing. The championship was mainly between 3 of the 4 Gibbs drivers of Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, and Denny Hamlin. Those 3 combined to win 18 of 36 races. So they combined to win half the schedule. And they combined for 18 of Joe Gibbs Racing's 19 wins in 2019, with the 19th win going to Eric Jones. Also, I should mention Kevin Harvick was also a decent in the championship battle too, but Harvick failed to be consistent when it mattered the most against the 3 JGR cars, so it was mainly between those 3 JGR cars all year. Yeah, and all 3 were dominant as Truex had 7 wins, Kyle Busch had 5 wins, and Denny Hamlin had 6 wins. In the end, it would come down to the season finale between all 3 of them, where Truex would enter the finale 11 points ahead of Kyle Busch, and he would enter, he would actually enter, let's see, 5 points ahead of Hamlin. So, Truex and Hamlin, whoever finished ahead of the other, would end up winning the championship. Kyle Busch could also lock up the title with a win, and if Truex finishes 4th or worse, and if Hamlin struggles. So in the season finale at Homestead, Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex Jr. both had a lot of pit road mistakes and issues. For Hamlin's pit crew member made a mistake of throwing a giant piece of grow tape on the front of his car, which caused his engine to overheat and water to pour out. So Hamlin would end up having to fall back. Hamlin would end up finishing 10th in the season finale. So that would effectively eliminate Hamlin from the championship battle. Martin Truex Jr.'s crew early in the race made a pit stop mistake when Truex's crew threw the left side tires on the right side of the car, and then vice versa. So Truex's crew had to come back in and fix that mistake. But meanwhile, while that was all happening, Kyle Busch's crew made no mistakes that race. Kyle Busch would go on to win the season finale at Homestead, Miami. The question is, would that be enough for Kyle Busch to lock up the championship? No, it would not. As Martin Truex Jr., after that pit road mistake, Truex would end up rallying, and Truex would come all the way back to finish 2nd in the season finale. And that 2nd place finish would have been more than enough for Martin Truex Jr. to lock up his 2nd championship in 3 years, as Truex would end up edging out Kyle Busch by only 4 points. So Truex would win the 2019 championship over Kyle Busch under this format. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up here for this part. So yeah, there was quite a lot to talk about in this video. Like, there were a lot of good championship battles under this format in the 2010s. And of course, in the 2010s, we had 7 title changes, with those title changes happening in 2011, 2012, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2018, and 2019. And we would also see 5 championship races. Yeah, 5. I think it's 5 26 races. Let's see. We had 2010 go down to the final race. 2014, 20. Yeah, 5. Yeah, 5 races. Championship battles went down to the final race of the year. So in terms of championship battles that went down to the final race of the year under this format, we had 16 instances of it. So we had equivalent 16 Game 7s under this format. Which is, so yeah, like I said before, it's pretty much like the F1 points format in real life, where it rarely goes down to the last race of the year. But every time it does, we get some pretty special moments for sure. And there have been some really interesting championship outs for sure under this points format. So, would this points format work with NASCAR in real life? Who knows? Probably, maybe, maybe not. I think it's worth definitely giving it a shot for a year. I mean, hey, you can't do any worse than the chase grid, right? But yeah, like, even under this format, you would still be crowning the best driver throughout the season, the champion still. And it'll be a season-long points format. But yeah, it would be an interesting experiment maybe to try for 1 year. Under this points format, Jimmy Johnson would still win 7 championships, but it would go a lot differently than it did in real life. Kyle Busch would still have 2 titles. Truex would have 2 titles. Harvick and Keselowski would only have 1 title each, and Edwards would only have 2 titles. Also, under this points format, Jeff Gordon would only win 5 championships. And like I mentioned earlier, Dale Earnhardt would only win 3 titles. And in terms of the 2020 Cup season, I'm going to do the 2020 Cup season last because for the final part of this series, I think I mentioned it before, the final part of this series, I'm going to be doing Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup in 2020 under the F1 points format all in one video. And I'm going to make that the final part of this series. So, the next part of this series, we're now going to be shifting over to the Xfinity side of this What If series. Since I'm going to do F1 points for Xfinity and Trucks too. So, we're going to go back to the inaugural season of the Xfinity series, which was 1982 was when the Xfinity series really started. And that's going to be at least 4 parts, and then the Truck series is going to be 3 parts. So, sorry that this part took a lot longer to make than before, but if you see by how long this part is and how many battles there were, you get the idea how long it was. Hopefully this was worth the wait. In terms of the Xfinity one, hopefully it doesn't take as long as this part did. But like I said, Xfinity, it really depends on how quickly I make it or not. Because my work schedule is doesn't really match up with the recording schedule at all this week and getting research done. But after this week, the next month on after next week, it really lines up perfectly. So maybe I can get some parts out for everybody real quick. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this part. That's all I got to say. Hope everyone has a great day, and see you in the next part of this What If series or whatever I make next. Peace.